Well, I want to design everything I do around making that a reality for all customers. So what is it about them that makes them successful? Right. So is it their size? Is it their investment? Is it their strategy? Is it, their leadership? I don't know. And so I've been spending a lot more time just doing a deep dive into that. And I recommend that all companies make that their primary focus, because when we just use the data, it's only telling you one piece of the story. And unfortunately, people are making changes and driving strategy solely around that, right? It's
On the data.
the qualitative. You need the qualitative and the quantitative.
Correct.
It's not enough to just have one. So I'm starting there, because if I understand what's happening with my customers, I can design everything around that and making it a reality.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Your Customer, Your Success. Joining us today is Kristi Faltorusso, a leading voice and a true innovator in the world of customer success. With over 15 years of experience, Kristi is setting the standard for what it means to lead in this field. She's built, scaled, and transformed customer success teams. She now serves as the Chief Customer Officer at ClientSuccess, and she's consistently ranked as one of the top 25 customer success influencers. Kristi is also the host of the She's So Sweet podcast. And from navigating the uncharted early days of customer success to becoming a trusted guide for professionals and organizations alike, Kristi's career is a masterclass in leadership, strategy, and transformation. And we are thrilled to have her here today. Kristi, welcome to the show.
Oh, Gary, I'm so excited to be here. And I always listen to the introductions and I always feel far more impressed by myself than the reality would seem. So thank you for that lovely introduction. Thank you.
You're quite welcome. And that is one thing I learned in my role as a client manager. And my role has always been very similar to a customer success manager. So that's why I am thrilled to have you here and talk to the audience about what customer success is, and hopefully shed some light on that world and how it can help some folks out there. Because you bring order to the chaos, let's just say. And if you've been in this profession long enough, like I have, there's enough chaos out there to go around. So let's get right into it, if you don't mind. I've heard you do this before, and you do a great job. Really, we're going to set the foundation here, right? So this is a new podcast. And if you could take us through what customer success means to you, what is the difference between customer success, a customer success manager, and customer success management?
Ooh. Okay, so customer success is the philosophy and execution of helping your customers achieve their goals with your solution or services, right? So whether that is software, whether that is just services, your customers are procuring these to achieve some specific outcome. It is the organization's opportunity, responsibility to achieve those goals. So that would be customer success. Now, your customer success manager is the orchestrator of that, right? They're the one there to help guide those customers to make that a reality. And then the customer success management, was that the third point?
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
Now that is the strategy of how we get from A to Z.
Correct.
So how do we actually go and do that? So you've got this ability to achieve those outcomes. You've got that orchestrator who's responsible and accountable for doing it. And then you've got the process in which it's executed through. Hopefully, I described that well enough for our listeners today.
Absolutely. And you have given some wonderful analogies in the past. Could you provide an analogy, perhaps?
I can. So one of my favorite ones is, listen, I'm a fitness girly. I love working out. And the best way that I can kind of make some correlations here are for folks when you think about going to the gym, right? And you buy a gym membership. You don't just magically achieve your goals because you've purchased that gym membership. As much as we'd all want to believe that could be the reality, and we've got all these new year, new me, just because you got the gym membership does not mean you will achieve those goals. But you are very clear on what those goals are, right? So for some people, it's to get healthier, it is to lose weight, whatever those goals are, live longer, touch your toes, whatever. You've got specific goals in mind when you go and sign up for that gym membership. It's not the gym's responsibility to help you achieve that goal, though, but you might work with a trainer. Now think about the trainer as your CSM. It's their job to understand your goals and then help you use the gym the best way possible to achieve them. And then you've got this kind of idea, if we think about customer success management, it's a strategy. So these are the exercises. What are the things that you're doing, right? If you're trying to increase your cardio, maybe you're going to go hit the treadmill, right? And you're going to run a little bit. If you want to gain muscle, you're going to go work out and lift some weights. So it's the same principles for customer success, right? You've got the place you go do it, the thing that you bought to go achieve those goals. You've got somebody there to help guide you to get there. And then you've got the things that are going to help you achieve that reality.
Brilliant. And I got to say, I was preparing for this episode, listening to you at the gym, actually, and in your podcast. So I was, it's January, and I was watching everybody kind of come on in and meet
Yeah,
with
new
the
year, new
membership
me.
people.
Yep.
New Year, oh, the whole crowd was in there, and the gym was packed. And so I was listening to all your podcasts, going over some of these basics. So it's actually kind of, I love that analogy, just brilliant. So thank you for that. So you've been doing this for quite some time, although it is a relatively new discipline in your world, right? Now, we've talked before, and we've talked about how we do this in financial services and investment servicing, and it's very similar. We don't use the exact terminology that you might use, but what I found interesting is when you started doing this, and it's what, 15 years ago or so, there was not much order to the chaos in your world. And I'd love to hear the story once again about how you dealt with that situation and how you brought some order to the discipline that you were trying to figure out.
Well, the reality is like to your point, right? The idea and the objective of the work that we do has been around forever, right?
Right.
People have been buying things, trying to achieve something for eternity, right? It's why we buy things, right? You go to the hardware store, you buy a hammer and a nail. You don't want to be the proud owner of a hammer and a nail. You want to go hang a picture in your living room, right?
Correct.
So there is this idea that we procure things to achieve outcomes. So that is not new. Fast forward a couple of years or so, right? You enter the world of software. And I think this is where things started to come to life a little bit more because we recognized that we had to help our customers achieve those outcomes, but we couldn't do that if we didn't know what they were. So over the past several years, there's been this mission to figure out, well, how do we get from A to Z, right? How do you well orchestrate a customer who's purchased your product or your services and get them to achieve their goals? And so over the past, now it's not been 15 years, so I don't want to I'm not gonna
I
give
was
myself the
ballparking.
extra 2 years. It was 13 years in customer success. But over the past 13 years, it's really been this mission around designing a strategy that works. Now, here's the tricky thing though. While the objectives remain the same, it looks different in every company. There
Right.
is no one size fits all. There's not even a one size fits most because every organization has a different product, a different market, a different buyer, right? There's so many different circumstances that require you to design a program that is going to be specific to helping your customers achieve their needs. And so this is where designing the order becomes a little tricky because you have to be very clear on what the objectives are, but also understand that there's going to be a multitude of ways that we're going to get there. So there are some fundamentals to the things that we do well in customer success, right? From how do we engage with our customers to defining their goals with them to making sure that you've got specific KPIs to track this, you've got milestones to understand that we're headed in the right direction. All of those things remain the same, right? It is company and industry agnostic. But the things that happen, the things we track, the ways we get there, that is all unique. And so I think that's where a lot of the challenges around customer success stem from is because it's not a one size fits all model. Just because I built and designed a world-class customer success organization at one company doesn't mean I can take the same framework and go apply it somewhere else. And I'll tell you, I tried to do that. I
Yep.
tried,
Did
Gary, I
you?
did try. I tried. And I failed
I-
miserably.
and
Yeah, it just doesn't work.
right. And true, right? Because your clients are all different. They have different needs, and you can't just come on in and say this worked over at company X. Especially, I think in your world, a little bit more than mine. I think my world's a little bit more static. Um, you got to make the payments, you got to settle the trades, you got to do this, and you got to file the tax reclaims. All
But I'm
fun,
sure
boring stuff.
the mechanisms in which you do those things have changed, right? Like
Over the years, they have, yeah, yeah,
I'm not a finance girl, but my husband is. And so I could tell you, like, right, like even innovation of technology and things like that change the way that you do those things.
yep.
So
No,
there's still evolution.
oh, absolutely, is evolution. I'm just saying I think the difference between the firms in software and technology is much greater than it might be for investment servicing, right? Because you're
Probably.
basically, yeah, you're doing the same kind of thing for a pension fund that no matter where you are. But so it's not quite as diverse of a client base, or the needs of the clients are they're always diverse, but it's a different client set. So that's where I was going with it. So you actually beat me to the next question. You actually covered my next question. So I'm going to go to the next question, which is tell us where we're at. I think 2024 was a bit of a challenging year. So if you can give a quick summary of what was going on, and then where we're at, and then your kind of outlook for 2025. It's a very
Oh
general statement,
gosh.
but
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful just to level set.
Yeah, absolutely. So listen, the customer success has seen quite the evolution over the past 13 years that I've been in this space. Obviously, I'm not the inventor and founder of customer success, so obviously this predates me probably by a decade or so. And there's been such significant changes over the past several years. And listen, I'll just go back to we'll say 2020, so we'll go back to COVID, because I think that's when we started to see some massive shifts. In the past 5 years, 4 years, have not been kind, right? We've
Right.
seen so much volatility in the market in the spaces, and so we've had to react and respond to all this. Now you also include and layer in innovation, right? The shift towards AI now has made a real compelling shift to how we think about the future. So I would say the past couple of years, I think there's been a real fundamental focus and shift towards scaling, right? Because
Mhm.
when we had a bunch of layoffs, you had companies who were restructuring and resizing. So there was this whole concept of like, all right, well, we got to do more with less, which I hate that statement more than
I
anything. I'm always like, you got to do something different with what you have. We're not doing more. We're not doing the same, right? You have to fundamentally shift if you've got less people.
Right.
Um, so there's been this big focus on scaling, right? Like, how do we continue to move forward? How do we change? How do we innovate? And then you had this reset, right? The market was not doing great in 2024, at least not for software, not for technology. You had money was expensive, VCs were not investing, customers are churning because budgets are being cut, teams are being downsized across the board. So you've got all these things kind of stacked against you, and customer success organizations were really, I think, unfortunately, hit. And we saw a lot of changes into our space as a result of all these market shifts. So you've got teams who are now also trying to figure out, well, like, okay, how do we re-strategize, right? Because we know that fundamentally this whole idea of do more with less, it doesn't work. It's not a reality. It's not something anybody else can do. So you've got 2024, which is everyone rethinking their strategy and their approach to it. What does their business need? How do we just do the best we can to achieve these goals?
Right.
And so I think 2024 was challenging for a lot of folks, and it was just a repositioning and building some fundamentals in place and figuring out, like, you know what, we've got to reroute ourselves in doing and designing what's best for our customers if we're going to retain them and if we have any shot at growing them. Now, as I start to see the pivots and shifts going to 2025, you've got a couple things that are, I think, big thematic things sticking out. One, you've got innovations in technology. So AI
Mhm.
specifically, I think, is
Mhm.
driving a change in behavior. You cannot have or use AI without good data. And so I have challenged everybody in every space that if AI is on your bingo card for 2025, so must data. Because if you don't get your data in
Mm.
in a good place, and you don't get it cleaned up, you're
Right.
not going to be able to take advantage of AI, right? It's garbage in,
Right.
garbage out.
Correct.
So that's going to be a big focus for a lot of companies. And then I think you've got this other pivot just around growth and revenue. So you're going to see a lot more customer success organizations align themselves with revenue in ways that they hadn't before. And so whether that is something that people are embracing or excited about, or maybe they're not, it's going to be a big reality for us, because at the end of the day, your install base is going to be your greatest revenue driver. So you got to get that right.
Wow. Yeah, and so it's definitely a bit of a dynamic situation, right? Help us drill down a little bit further. If you're the head of a customer success organization now, take us through, steps you would recommend to kind of diagnose if you're not maybe if you're not performing the way you should, to diagnose the organization, and the way you would think about um, driving meaningful improvement, given this backdrop that we're working in.
So I think the problem right now is that so many companies are strictly looking at maybe data, or they're going by what their gut tells them, or they're optimizing for processes and optimizing for efficiencies in their organization. And unfortunately, I think that's the wrong way to approach this. In my opinion, in my experiences, it's got to be based on what your customers need and what's
Right.
actually happening in your customer base. So for me, I start everything with understanding, well, why are customers going, or why are they staying, and what are their behaviors being driven by? I think without truly understanding that, and I don't mean making assumptions and guesses, I mean like truly going
Right.
deep into that to really understand it, you can't solve problems that you don't understand. So for me, I've been spending a lot of time on that. So I've got customers who have been wildly successful with us and who continue to grow with us and make big investments. Well, I want to design everything I do around making that a reality for all customers. So what is it about them that makes them successful? Right? So is it their size? Is it their investment? Is it their strategy? Is it, their leadership? I don't know. And so I've been spending a lot more time just doing a deep dive into that. And I recommend that all companies make that their primary focus, because when we just use the data, it's only telling you one piece of the story. And unfortunately, people are making changes and driving strategy solely around that, right? It's
On
the
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 data,
qualitative, you need the qualitative and the quantitative. It's
correct.
not enough to just have one. So I'm starting there, because if I understand what's happening with my customers, I can design everything around that and making it a reality.
And how do you go about doing that, right? Because the qualitative, I agree completely, but I think that, and I've talked already on that. This is 5 episodes long. This podcast I already talked about this 2 or 3 times. How do you go about getting that qualitative, not necessarily data-driven perspective?
I speak to my customers.
There you go.
I mean, like, I know, I like,
I was
you
setting
know,
you up for
when
an easy one.
if somebody gave a different response to
Uh,
that, I'd be scratching my head a little bit. I tell leaders this all the
but
time, but I'm like, I spend 40% of my week in non-escalated, and I have to articulate that, non-escalated customer conversations. This means
right.
that I have proactively engaged these customers to have discussions. Um, and I believe that if you are a customer success, a customer experience, a customer, whatever your title is, leader, and you are not spending a good percentage of your time speaking with and engaging proactively with your customers, you are at a huge disadvantage, because you don't
Right.
truly understand what's going on.
Right. And obviously that was a simple question on purpose, but there's the second part of this is you have, because that's what I've been doing for Lord knows 20, 25 years. You have to listen to those people who are talking to the customers too, right? So you have to take all that information in and and synthesize that across the board, right? So you have to listen to the people or have a mechanism for listening to that feedback from the customer success managers or whatever you call them in your organization. And I'm not sure that that's always done effectively, right? So I think that's a big part of it, listening and taking that feedback and not going into what you talked about, that one size fits all. Here's what we're doing, you know, tough, you know
So
what.
here's something that I love, right? So we are living in this digital age, where innovation is a friend and a foe, depending on what day it is for me. But let's assume that AI and these innovations are friendly today. What I love about the advancements in this area is all of those conversations. One, you've got technology that's recording all of these conversations. You've got them transcribing all of these conversations. You have the technology actually calling out sentiment and finding words and language and processing that. Now think about doing that at scale. So what once used to take me, I don't know, days, weeks, months to go and find themes and patterns and behaviors, now requires me to do only a few things, right? Empower and
Hmm.
enable my team to ask the right questions. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how great your conversation is. If you're not asking the right questions, you're not going to
Right.
understand and you're not going to get the right information.
Hmm.
But now take all of that and drop it in AI. Let me just tell you, themes bubble up really quickly when you have processing that happens in about 30 seconds. I take all of these recordings, all of these transcriptions, and I put them into AI, and I actually have it come back to me and tell me, like, what are the things that our customers love about the work that we're doing? What are the challenges that they're faced with? What are their top priorities? And boom, 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 boom. I can see all of that super quickly. So also, I think while you're having these conversations, think about, how do you use technology to support the things that you're working on?
Yeah, brilliant. Right. And believe it or not, there is a lot of struggle with that. And in some of the places I've been, that's not always been the case. But I think that's the proper and intelligent use of the data and the technology. And I think people have been struggling a little bit conceptually to kind of come up with exactly that um, methodology for it. But it's pretty simple when you think about it. But I wanted to make sure you got that out there for the audience because I think the benefit of the customer management experience in whatever form you call it is just in that and getting that feedback directly from the client. And like you said, getting it at scale is where you need to be. Let's talk about metrics that you find useful or maybe your approach to applying the metrics because I know it's going to be different for each organization, for each client, but are there metrics or what is your approach to applying metrics to the discipline?
Listen, you can't manage what you can't measure. So you have to
Right.
have some way to understand, how are we performing? But I think the challenge becomes people that track activity over impact, right? I see a lot of organizations that will track things like number of calls that we've had, right? Or number of engagements or things like that, these arbitrary things. Well, did we get them through the 8 onboarding steps in 30 days? those are the wrong things to track. And so I'm not here to tell people what they should or shouldn't, because again, I do think that this is personal to every company, because what you do requires different milestones and things that you're looking at. But for me, it's more about what is the objective that we're trying to achieve with all of these KPIs. So for me, if engagement from my team working directly with my customers is with the sheer objective is that we are helping our customers understand how do they maximize the value and achieve their goals from our software, well, something that I can measure, right, is there a direct correlation between my customers who are engaging with my CSMs and their adoption and usage of our product, right? So I think it's important to understand that certain metrics can't live alone in a silo because they don't tell you the full story. So not only do you have to get access to the right KPIs and metrics, but you also have to marry them in a way that's going to tell a more comprehensive story. So for me, onboarding, I don't care that my customers, they showed up for the 8 meetings that are required for onboarding. Did they do the things? Did they configure the product? Did we get them set up to succeed? Can they independently use our software moving forward to achieve their goals, right? There are very specific things that we need to measure and pay attention to. So those are the types of KPIs I look for as leading indicators. Now, of course, in our world, things that are, I think, pretty standard, you're going to have net revenue retention. So not only the dollars that you had, dollars you grew. We're going to look for logo retention, number of
Mm,
customers you started with, number of customers you end with,
right.
right? These are going to be important KPIs for us. But like I said, those are your lagging indicators. And if you've got customers who are in multi-year deals, 3 years, 5 years, you can't wait 5 years to know if your program is working,
Right.
right? And it takes a long time to move those types of metrics any significant amount of points. So for me, it's you've got to be very clear on what are the milestones and what are the leading indicators that you as an organization are paying attention to. I can rattle off a list of the ones that I'm tracking, but I'll tell you the truth, they're not going to be the same for everybody. So
That's
I'm
fine.
going
That's
to
fine.
I'm going to keep that to myself because I don't want people looking at the wrong things because it might not be relevant.
No, 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 no. Yeah, that's not the goal. The goal is to get your approach to thinking of it and thinking through just that. Certainly, everybody knows that the saying that you can't manage what you can't measure, but at the same time, I think we fall into that trap of I call it metrics myopia when you're just managing to the metrics and not managing your customer relationships, which is the main thing that will drive the numbers you want eventually. But it's always a difficult topic to um, get right. Right. I think we struggle with it. And I think a lot of organizations have that short term focus on just the number, depending on how they utilize those metrics. So I think it's always an important discussion to have and to think about doing it intentionally and getting it right. So let's continue to drill down. One other specific topic I wanted you to talk about that I found interesting that I haven't really thought about in the framework that you did, but can you talk to us about what is an ICP and why is it important, and how do you think about that intentionally and strategically?
Okay, so your ICP is your ideal customer profile. Now, the way that I think about this is probably different than the way that if you're working with sales or marketing, the way that they might think about it. Because from their point of view, and you think about go to market teams in general, their ICP is going to be aligned with whomever purchases,
Hmm.
right? Anybody who qualifies, they look a certain way who will buy. But just because you'll buy does not mean you're going to be successful.
Right.
And so I think I'm going to first start off by saying is if you are in a customer ecosystem, part of your organization, any, whatever it's called, customer experience, customer success, and you are not part of the ICP or ideal customer profile design, you do not have an ideal customer profile. You have an ideal customer buyer or prospect buyer. You have an ideal buyer. That's about it. That's what your marketing and that is what your sales teams are designing is just that. The person who's
The,
going to buy,
the
the
buy.
profile of the buyer. That's it.
Right.
So when I think about your ideal customer profile, it's through the lens of who has the ability to be the most successful with our partnership.
Correct.
And so, Gary, I created something a couple of years ago called success probability score. And so the success probability score is a framework that I designed specifically at ClientSuccess for our customer base that says, here are the things about my customer that indicate to us whether they have a likelihood to be successful with a lower level of effort or a higher level of effort. Now, I say this because I believe that anyone can be successful with us. But what is the investment that me and my
Right.
team need to make in order to make that a reality? So the lower the score, the higher the investment. The higher the score, the lower the investment. And it's very much helped my team design a framework around engagement, but then also help me predict risk.
No, I like that. I haven't heard you talk about that before because certainly I've inherited the client from sales that seemed wonderful, but it was a challenge to keep them happy, right? I'll just say it. But what I found is, measuring that level of effort, I've used metrics in the past that were not effective. It was something like a time allocation. Well, the percent time allocation, what's that going to do? If I have 10 clients, it's going to be different than if I have 15 or 20, right? Because you can't spend as much time just by math
Right.
on that client. But what you really should be measuring is just what you said, that effort in the challenge it's going to be to ensure their success with the organization, whether it be, for my world, accounting or benefit payments or whatever it is. It's going to take more time and more effort from the team, which fine, it might happen, but that's something you need to be measuring a little more specifically. And I think organizations miss the mark on that as well. And you run into the challenge of, yeah, they seem like the ideal client coming in, and you struggle to keep them happy and retain them, right? And that's your goal always.
Absolutely. And that's kind of the idea of why I created this success probability score. And ours is based on 11 points of criteria that are very unique to my customers, but we've worked with enough successful customers to understand what that profile looks like. All my points are binary, so they're yes or no. There's
Oh,
no gray. You don't get partial credit. Each of them is weighted differently. So it's not a yes or no. Not
uh,
everything is created equal, and it's
it's
allowed me to create a score.
it's just wow, it's a binary. I was going to say, was it out of 5, out of 10, something
Oh
like that?
gosh, no, it's a yes or no.
Wow.
Everything there is a yes or no. You either meet the criteria or you do not.
Hmm. Interesting. So that's going to dovetail nicely into my favorite section of the podcast, which I call "Does It Hold Water?" And so, "Does It Hold Water?" is where we have our guest play our expert witness for the day. So you will be our resident Mona Lisa Vito today, and see if the defense case holds water or not. And basically, I read a quote from a thought leader or anyone that you can either agree with or not agree with. Okay.
Okay.
All right. This one's right up your alley. Okay. The defense team today, Kristi, is the sales team. And the sales team's case is built around this statement: "The problem I have with customer success managers is they don't often act with enough urgency." Does that exist?
Sadly, ah, I kind I kind of think it holds water.
Uh oh.
Okay, so in my defense, and I actually had this conversation with a sales leader or expert or influencer, and he and I discussed this at length because I don't disagree. I think that sometimes, listen, sales acts with a specific urgency because there is revenue on the line, right? So there is a clear motivator there. Sometimes customer success does not, right? Because they don't understand what to prioritize. And so I don't know that it's not that they're acting with urgency. I think it's that they lack the ability to understand impact. And so they might not be prioritizing the same things.
Hmm. Interesting. I don't know if I agree or not. To be honest with you, I would say I don't, because in my world, we have to act with such urgency that there could be a set of trade settlement. There's financial implications
Okay,
to
but see, like,
that, but
look, but there's revenue driving your urgency.
it's or a loss, really. There's a
Right.
huge
So
loss, right?
there's money. So I think that that's where sales acts urgently is because there's money.
There-
When customer success maybe doesn't is because there's no money.
I think
Not for
but
them
it's
necessarily, but understanding the direct correlation to their thing and dollars today versus dollars tomorrow.
I think where the conflict is at the level of what is urgent or what's not, because we have to, from my world, have to deal with such urgency, and down to the a deadline could be at 3 o'clock or whatever it is, and something to do with an RFP response or whatever, which is urgent and important because you need to get the RFP out the door by 5 o'clock on Thursday. We get it, but we've got stuff not settling or whatever. So that's always an interesting one to bat back and forth. So hopefully my sales colleagues who are listening won't be too ticked off at me for that one. But I thought that would be an interesting one for you. So all right. So let's go in our remaining time. We're going to do what I call chip shots, which are shorter form questions for you that are more personal but professional in nature, and thoughts and ideas that have helped shape your success. So the first one I have people have liked is a book. What is one book that has shaped your personal or professional life that you could recommend to the audience?
Atomic Habits. Hands down,
Hands down.
best book. I'm looking at it right here. It stays very close to me all the time. I've designed my entire life, personally and professionally, around creating habits that create discipline, that create the outcomes that I'm shooting for. So whether it is personal or professional, whether it's in the gym or in my career, creating good habits. That book
And,
is phenomenal.
and who's it by?
Oh gosh, James Cleary.
James
I
Clear.
had to look. I
I
had to
don't
go
know.
look.
That's okay. Okay. So the next one for you, I think, will be interesting. Is there a experience or failure early in your career that you learned from that you still carry with you today? A lesson that you've learned.
Advocate for yourself. Nobody else is advocating for you. You have got to be your biggest champion. That means negotiate for what you deserve. It means advocate for what you believe. Nobody else is in the room fighting for you the way you'd fight for yourself.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. I had a similar answer to that a couple episodes ago. I agree completely. One habit or routine that you've cultivated over the years that you believe contributes to your personal or professional success?
Making my bed every day.
Make
No, seriously,
the
there's a very famous speech from a graduation by an admiral. I forget. Do you know what I'm talking about?
no.
And there's a book, and it's called Make Your Bed. The same guy who gave the speech, and his name is, I forget right now. I will find it so that you can put it in your show notes. But Make Your Bed. And it talks about this ability to have a small win, and how the minute you have a small win and cross something off your list, it creates the momentum for your day. So I start
I got
every
you.
day with actually I started with going to the gym. But when I get home from the gym and my husband's out of the bed, I make the bed. So that is my
All right.
habit that has dictated my behaviors for the day.
I am guilty of not doing that one as often as you, but I do try to walk every morning, which you talked it is, what is it, -2 degrees wind chill outside today. So there was no walking today, but walking is mine. All right, one more for you, and this is a new one. I just asked it for the first time yesterday, and it was a hit actually with my guest. If you could spend the day shadowing a leader or a professional in any industry, who would it be, and what would you hope to learn from them?
Oh my gosh. Oh Lord. This is a good one. Oh, uh,
That's okay. We I put you on the spot.
probably. Oh my God. You're right. This is tricky because I'm like, so many names are coming to my head and I'm like, I don't know. There's probably somebody better. Listen, I think I'm going to pick somebody, but I'm going to pick them like 20 years ago. So
That's
I'm going
fine.
to say Jeff Bezos, but like circa like 1995 to 99, 2000. Like I want early Jeff.
Early
When
chat.
when he was in his grind and he saw a vision of disruption that nobody else could see or understand. I don't want to
Yeah.
be Jeff today. He's just sailing around on a yacht with his beautiful wife. So like, I mean, while I would want to shadow him today, I don't feel like my lessons learned would be as rich. So I'm going to
As
say
early.
Jeff, but I need early Jeff.
Early Jeff. Good one.
Early Jeff.
Early Jeff. I like that one. So early Jeff is probably somebody I back in the day, yeah, I looked at it. What is that guy doing? And of course,
Right. I think everyone was. Remember that picture that circulated where he's just sitting in like the one room with like a bunch of books and he's just like,
yeah,
in his white button down. Like I think that picture became famous, but like I want that Jeff, the Jeff that
that's
had a
interesting.
vision that like nobody could understand. And he was maniacally focused on seeing something bigger than like a book distribution website.
Yeah, right.
He knew it would be bigger. And I know that,
That's
listen, my husband wishes I would find a way to like undo my love for Amazon because the bills
uh
are out of this world.
oh, I hate, yeah, the boxes just keep coming and coming
They
and
don't
coming
stop.
here. They don't, yeah, that. I spend half my day breaking down the boxes for the
Breaking down
recycling.
boxes.
Breaking down boxes. So, Kristi, I can't thank you enough for being on your Customer Your Success. This was an absolute pleasure. Your insights are going to be very helpful for the audience. Before we go, you've got a lot going on. So why don't you tell folks where they can find you if they like, and where are you out there, because you do a lot.
I do, and I appreciate that. I would say anybody who's interested in connecting with me, you can go find me on LinkedIn, Kristi Faltorusso. I believe I'm the only one out there. So if you type in my name and even spell it closely, you should find me. You can also head over to my website, KristiFaltorusso.com. I've got all of my resources, insights, everything I share right in one place. Great repository for anybody who's interested in the customer experience world.
And don't forget the podcast. She's so
Oh gosh.
sweet.
Well, you're gonna
S
go find all the podcasts on the website. But yes, she's so sweet. I've got CS and
S
DS on Churned and the customer success hotline. So I've got 3 podcasts out there, all sharing different things with wonderful guests and hosts.
Awesome. Kristi, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gary. This was great.
Bye for now, folks. That's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We hope you found something insightful that will enhance your experiences and drive your success. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a review and share your thoughts to help us improve the show. Don't forget to head on over to marracxhub.com for more ways to connect with me and learn more about experience management. Until next time, I'm Gary Marra, working hard for your customer and your success.